Roll call, supervisors, please. Laura's coming in.
Yeah, but we can't move.
Yeah.
Jerry, can you press Laura? She's coming. She's right there. We got you. I'll hang out to it. She's right there.
All right. Let everybody know.
All supervisors are present.
Everybody's here. How nice. Thank you. Presentation of the 2022 Kenosha County budget by County Executive Jim Kreuser. Come up here, Jim. Thank you.
How you doing? Clerk, how are you? Can everybody hear me? I guess it's on at a right volume. I think I'll just take this in for a moment. Being the last budget I'll be presenting as county executive. Good evening, Chairman O'Day, Vice Chair Uhas, members of the county board, elected officials, and fellow citizens of Kenosha County. County board, county employees, our county residents, the state, the nation, the world have all been through and continue to go through unprecedented times. We are strong and resilient in Kenosha County, and that is evident by our robust economic indicators, the highlight which was our county achieving a AAA bond rating. We have joined the elite group of counties that have reached financial management excellence. Join me in a round of applause for Patty Merrill, the Finance Director, Barna Bench, Budget Director, Matt Lays, Jim Kupfer, Chris Walton, and the rest of our Kenosha County Finance team. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Thank you. It's the people that make a difference in Kenosha County. That's right, AAA. For years we've strived to attain that goal, the highest rating that the bond agencies award. Now we can say it, Kenosha County is a AAA county. And it's because of the fiscal responsible policies that this county board has endorsed, supported, created, and followed for the past 13 years that made our AAA rating a reality. AAA was possible because of our focused discipline on adding value to strong economic facts about Kenosha County, such as our 5-year job growth from 2015 to 2020 is the highest in the state of Wisconsin at 11.1%. Net new construction is third highest in the state. The county sales tax collections have broken all records in all months but one this year. Equalized value went up 47% in the past 8 years. The county's unassigned reserves as a percentage of the general fund expense is above 30%. This budget before you tonight is a property tax decrease for the average homeowner. This budget, when compared to 2008, lowers the dependency of property tax to 68% from 73%. And to top that, our overall long-term obligations are still almost $25 million less than they were in 2008. And this is a lean budget. but it keeps us on the path to keep our AAA bond rating intact. And our amount that we are under the statutory levy limit is almost $19 million, the highest it's ever been. This budget continues our strong commitment to enhancing our infrastructure, which leads to economic development, which leads to jobs. And this budget starts our planned decline of our annual borrowing for infrastructure for the next number of years. This budget also leverages a considerable amount of outside funding to help protect and improve our environment for generations to come, creating a springboard for economic development and improved quality of life. And this budget maintains our strong support for law enforcement and public safety, while also laying a path for long-term sustainable delivery of human services to our most vulnerable residents. As you all know, the American Rescue Plan Act, known as Arpa, signed into law by the President earlier this year, is providing nearly $33 million in funding to Kenosha County. This infusion of revenues comes with requirements on how it can be used. And this budget sets a plan in motion to maximize our opportunities with these funds over the next 3 years. And because these are one-time funds, care must be taken when it comes to using these funds. This budget sets aside ARPA dollars to support public health and behavioral health over the next 3 years. Cases are continuing to ebb and flow, as we know, and we need to be ready for the effects and the long-term effects of the pandemic on businesses, our community, and our county workforce. The funds in this budget begin to set aside behavioral health, a focus of several members on this board, that will help us and the community to address these anticipated increase in behavioral health needs in the upcoming years. This budget sets aside ARPA funds to offset direct COVID-related expenses to Brookside Care Center, including but not limited to PPE, cleaning supplies, and additional staff for testing, screening, and care of the residents who may test positive with this virus. Part of our ARPA plan for 2021, which you will consider separately, it's my hope you would consider it separately from this budget for 2021, also include proposed additional funds for county staff who have gone above and beyond time and time again during this pandemic. This includes command staff in the Sheriff's Department, correctional officers, staff at Brookside, and of course, our public health staff that continues to lead our COVID-19 response. I agree with Supervisor Terry Rose that these employees earn some recognition for their efforts and all their extra hours they put in. A separate item for you to vote on in the coming weeks is being presented tonight to give the county board an opportunity to recognize the staff's hard work during this past pandemic. To let our employees know how much we appreciate them. We value them. And we're counting on our employees to get us through this. This will include financial recognition for all employees, from staff figuring out how to do their work from home with a moment's notice, to our exempt employees who work many additional hours without any additional compensation, to public health, staffing 7 days a week, to a variety of employees staffing the mass vaccination clinics. And Supervisor Rose, you and I again agree on a principle, on the need to acknowledge and compensate our law enforcement. and the supervisors in law enforcement for the extra work they put in the community's greatest time of need. Our ARPA plan, that will be discussed with you later tonight, and also in this budget, will provide us with a sustainable way to get there. Our plans need to be sustainable and not leave a cliff for future county boards to fund. ARPA also provides us with an opportunity to support capital projects and to support efforts to provide broadband internet service to underserved rural areas of our county. This budget lays that groundwork for that, taking advantage of grants to fund some of the much-needed projects a bit sooner than we had anticipated, but we're able to do it, thereby decreasing our need to borrow in future years. This budget also includes the restoration and funding for protection of the Kemper Center shoreline. It also includes a project that will be a game changer in Summers and the west side of the city of Kenosha now and for generations to come. The south branch of the Pike River is an important part of the Pike River system that was compromised by agricultural ditching in the early 20th century. Many of us have probably driven over it countless times and not even realizing it was there. I know Sandra Beth knows it was there. But in reality, the current condition of this drainage way that flows into the main Pike River into Petrifying Springs is a high contributing factor for flooding that affects the entire Pike system and diminishing the potential for economic development in that area. Thanks to a recent award of $10 million from the Army Corps of Engineers, this budget begins the process of restoration that will put the South Pike back on the map and off the flood maps. Along the way, with this outside funding, we'll be able to add a multi-use trail along the river that will connect several neighborhoods on the west end of the city through Summers to UW Parkside and hook up on the existing trail down to Carthage College and then to downtown Kenosha. Supervisor Maurer, this will be a great enhancement to the village and the town of Summers, and they are excited about it, and I know you are too. It has the support of Carthage College, UW Parkside, Gateway Technical College, Kenosha Sports Fishing Conservation Association, Ducks Unlimited local chapter, and many other organizations. This is the most important environmental quality of life project before Kenosha County right now. And it dates back to 1983 in the sewer pack plans of the long-range plan. This project will help the town and the village of Summers, as you will, they're very aware of this and will be supportive, as well as the city of Kenosha, and it will help Kenosha County. As I said earlier, this budget continues our commitment to building the infrastructure needed to create economic development. In the coming weeks, we will cut the ribbon on the largest county trunk highway project in Kenosha County's history, the Highway S expansion. I want to thank this board for the support of that much-needed project and for its support and the continued support of the Kenosha County highway system. Since 2008, we've just paved under 200 miles, just under 200 miles of county trunk highways out of the 253 miles we have. I know, that is worth applause for the highway department. How about that? And we have set a firm goal of paving 15 miles a year of paving and maintenance each year, and being able to address issues before they become bigger problems. This budget contains that program. And yes, Supervisor Decker, this includes the bridge deck over the Fox River on Highway JB, which needs to be done. More traffic in Kenosha County is a direct result and a lot of the diversions off major roads as they're getting built, of infrastructure development leading to economic development, resulting in jobs, and the several road projects in this and past budgets are tied directly to economic development needs, and I'm asking the board to continue that momentum. And it's certainly been another strong year for our economic development in Kenosha County. And our partners at the Kenosha Area Business Alliance report 4 million square feet of new developments recently completed or under construction in Kenosha County, and 2.8 million square feet of speculative industrial development currently under construction, and an additional 3.5 million square feet of industrial development now being planned or permitted. Vulcan Plastics is a Canadian company that recently chose Pleasant Prairie for its North America operations, moving into one of the few vacant buildings in Lakeview Corporate Park. Up the road, work continues on the 330,000 square foot Kroger Fulfillment Center, where we recently secured a $1 million T grant from the state of Wisconsin to build out County Trunk Highway 8H with turn lanes to accommodate the traffic going in and out. Nexus Pharmaceuticals cut the ribbon in July on its 84,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Prairie Highlands Corporate Park, bringing 77 great paying jobs to Kenosha County now and an expected 400 in the long term. A grand opening is coming soon at NOSCO, 175,000 square foot Packaging Innovation Center in Pleasant Prairie that will be home to nearly 300 of the company's 700 plus employee owners. On the west end, Geneva Supply celebrated a grand opening of its 365 square foot building in Randall in the old Gander Mountain. Mark Nordigan and I were there for that. Great group of guys, great company. And R&D Custom Automation is now up and running in its 62,000 square foot manufacturing and corporate headquarters facility in the Salem Business Park, which we partnered with CABA in the village of Salem, Salem Lakes, to get that park going. And now it's over half full. Make no mistake, all of Kenosha County remains a hotspot for economic development in our region. And this board has played a key role in all of our success. Your support for the High Impact Fund and CABA since 2011 has contributed to the creation of 1,567 jobs and $298 million in new private investment. It helped secure 14 projects over the years, with 3 pending at this very time. And I ask for your continued support of this valuable economic tool. This board is also in the position to decide how Kenosha County will address a long-term need that ties directly to how we're serving the most vulnerable citizens. The Job Center building is in need of significant investment to maintain it as a viable facility and beyond the next few years. And those of you who serve on Public Works and Human Services Committee heard a few weeks ago that they are at a crossroads where they can decide where to make an investment to ensure the services are delivered efficiently, effectively, and in the communities that need them the most. This budget gives the county board the choice. You can do nothing and let the current facility deteriorate, keep the job center where it is, do a few repairs, or for the same amount of money or a similar investment, you can relocate to a more central location in the core service area in Wilson Heights, which adds the most value, and the synergy working with the Unified School District and also Kenosha Youth Development Services. This budget also addresses another future county's facility need. I call it a need. adding an elevator to make the second story of the Kenosha County Center completely accessible to address future space needs there. This adds 3,400 square feet of additional usable, accessible space to the Kenosha County Center at 45 and 50, and gives us more options as we align space needs with the logical places to locate departments and services in the future. Planning for the future isn't only about bricks and mortar. It's also about people who work for Kenosha County. People who come in every day and make sure the services are delivered, the public is protected, and the community's needs are met. I would like to thank this board for supporting the IT department. We have seen what they can accomplish. When the pandemic hit, we were able to mobilize remote workforce in a matter of days. When the civil unrest happened, they ensured our operations continued, supported the emergency command center around the clock, and set up a secure remote command post. They transitioned our courts to operate virtually and laid the foundation for our health department to conduct the mass vaccination clinics. Our law enforcement personnel continue to do yeoman's job under sometimes the most difficult circumstances. I know this board understands the need to to support those who protect and serve our community. Our employees in human services are helping the most vulnerable every day. And they're your friends and your neighbors. Tell them I'm busy. Kenosha County's greatest resource is its employees. Competition for employees is tighter than ever, especially here. As I mentioned earlier, Kenosha County has the highest employment growth in the state. We are competing now against some of the outstanding local companies. So we are taking steps to ensure that our employees have a solid wage and benefit schedule. It's the people in Kenosha County team that make a difference every day out in our community. As part of our benefit schedule, we are also including 2 additional holidays for our staff: Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth. Time Kenosha County recognizes these 2 very important holidays, celebrating a great American and a significant event in our nation's history. This kind of acknowledgement, recognition, and celebration of our nation's history that employees in our diversity task force have suggested, and they are in this budget. There are other initiatives in this budget to continue our racial equity work, which is now kicking into high gear with the recent launch of the Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission. We've been listening and taking measures on equity efforts, both internally, externally. And this budget addresses that as well. We are continuously working to make sure our workforce reflects the full diversity of our community. We recently completed a racial equity audit assessment of our employees so that we can fully understand the types of trainings and programs that would be most beneficial. This budget includes adding a diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator to better target the county's efforts both internally and externally, so that we make sure we reprioritize what services we provide and how we provide them, as we better understand our external and internal customers and their needs. And we are showing continuous improvement in our services to improve our quality of life for all of those we serve. This budget, we continue to support building our future and the important work it is doing to improve student outcomes for all in Kenosha County. Internally, we're continuing to plan for racial equity training for all of Kenosha County employees. We are looking to start affinity groups for our employees, and we're reviewing our procedures through an equity lens. We must not slow down on the momentum as a county on what we've gotten done over the last year and a half. Two years ago, this board supported a great quality of life project that has now taken shape on the west end of our county. When I took office, the county owned an old gravel pit on County Trunk Highway KD with a gate that was locked with a sign that said no trespassing. With this board's support, and over the years, we've transformed that land and expanded it to what has become Katy Park. And finally, with the adoption of the 2020 budget, we appropriately named it Kenosha County Veterans Memorial Park. This initiative would maintain the serene, sustainability-focused nature of the park, while also providing a long overdue place to honor all veterans in and from Kenosha County. Tonight, I'm happy to report that the first amenities of that park enhancement, Supervisor Lewis has been out there taking a look at it. That park enhancement is a Veterans Honor Plaza and a parking lot overlooking the park and an additional park entrance off County Trunk Highway F. And they are substantially complete. And we will celebrate a ribbon cutting at noon next Tuesday, October 12th. And all are invited. The veterans from our community who make up the work group that helped design that park are very pleased with the progress we've made, and I believe you will be impressed as well. This budget includes future enhancements to Kenosha County Veterans Memorial Park as we continue to build out a tribute to veterans. With 335 acres and miles of hiking available, this is an area for the whole community to gather, reflect, and recreate. This is well on its way to becoming a beautiful place for meditation or to walk, to unwind, and for everyone in our county. This is a tight budget. It has a number of moving parts that secure funding from many places other than the property tax. All of these projects are moving Kenosha County forward in our infrastructure, our business and job creation, our quality of life improvement, and a continued commitment to our veterans. And this budget does all this and lowers the property taxes on the average home. The past budgets I delivered to the board and you've adopted has gotten us to AAA. And this budget works toward keeping us there while continuing to make Kenosha County a great place to live, work, play, and raise a family. I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you on this 2022 budget. Any questions you have or how to make it better as we move forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. May God bless America. May God bless Kenosha County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Here's your budget book, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Physical budget books are being passed out as you.
Thank you all very much. Patty?
In addition to the zip drive, you're going to get inside the book 2 documents tucked in the front pocket of the budget book. One's a schedule for the budget hearing meetings that will take place during the week of October 25th. The second in the budget inquiry request form. This form should be used by all supervisors for questions related to the 2022 budget. These completed forms should be directed to the attention of the Budget Director, Barna Benz. They will be received prompt attention. They will be handled efficiently for responses. Thank you. Supervisor
When
Gens.
you get some type of calendar for when each of the committees is gonna go over their budget, if that could be sent out to all the supervisors, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
I thought it was just our budget hearings on that week. Is it all the committees?
The budget hearings should be in the book, in the front of the book. In the,
He's not talking about finance, he's talking about individual.
that was already handed out. Yeah, I think that was already passed out.
It's not what I'm asking for, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for the committees, like Public Works.
I believe that was already sent out.
All right. Well, I don't know. I didn't get it, so,
Am I right, Joe? Didn't we send that out?
yeah. Maybe each of the chairs could share, Supervisor Gaschke just brought up a great idea. Maybe the chairs for those committees could tell when their meetings are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Supervisor Gaschke. Did you have a question?
No,
Comment?
no, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, this time we'll have citizens' comments. Any citizens? No, she's not, she's after.
Rating,
Hold
but I have to be
on.
honest.
I want to make sure the mic's on for you.
Can you hear me? I'd be surprised if people can't.
Name and address, please.
Would you like me to repeat that name? All right. Tom Stanzik, 8623 21st Avenue. And you mind resetting my time, being you kind of took it off, having me repeat that? I appreciate it. Congrats on the AAA rating, but I have to be honest, it doesn't really make me feel better. Instead of showing the beautiful lakefront photos, why don't we show Uptown? Which is still burned out by riots, not civil unrest, unchecked riots, looting, and arson. Let's get that right. And how about an investigation? I mean, we like that instead of making the lakefront's fine. How about that? Or how about our kids that are still masked and in plexiglass cages? It just doesn't make me excited to see that AAA rating while those things still persist. Lower property tax, that sounds great, but why is my paycheck getting smaller and my taxes getting higher and higher every year? More grants allowing federal government to dictate what we should do and not the other way around. Feels like another bribe for continued draconian law. How about we start telling the Fed what we want, not the other way around? We don't need more info and funding on COVID. We've had enough of it. How about focusing on actual decentralization of the out-of-control spending and expansion of government instead? Or maybe how about trying to do something about these heroes that are now being fired for wanting a choice on their health care? All this restoration is nice if it wasn't adding more taxes to citizens already at the breaking point. New businesses, that would be great if you could find workers, but how about we try to incentivize workers instead of remodeling the job center? And I've been there many times. It can wait a couple years. What really needs to be done, and what is just more spending? I personally don't know, but as my representatives, I'd like you all to actually look in and figure out what is really needed and what is just wasteful spending. Because the average citizen, cost of living is going way up. And what about government employees? Are we really raising their pay when the normal citizens can barely make it? I think we should take care of we the people before the state. I thought that was what America was about. And finally, equity. You know, it's rich coming from a county that turned its back on the underprivileged while the city burned. You know, virtual signaling doesn't solve any issues. If you really want to see how good virtual signaling is, drive down 22nd Avenue. You'll see how good virtual signaling is. On a final note, in the previous committee meeting, I just heard Supervisor Decker point out the completely out of line communications from the health director to the schools, speaking as though she had the authority to shut down in-person learning. This is outrageous. And it makes me question whether she's the right pick for health director. If we're raising pay for government employees and we are expanding spending while people are on the brink just so we can make virtual signaling points or pretty up a park for another photo op, Well, that doesn't really help me out much as a citizen. I think it's time maybe you start listening to us.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Griffin, 2007 81st Street. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but when I heard, and I don't know what's in the budget, but when I heard that sounded like bonuses for government employees. Have a problem with that. Taxpayer money going for bonuses, I have a problem with that. Don't tell me people worked hard for COVID. I work in healthcare. Yes, I worked hard for COVID. But of course now they're saying you're going to get fired because you want a choice in your health care. But I also have to say, I've not been totally involved in Kenosha government, but when I have been, I've been very dismayed. Just came from a meeting that they're spending millions of dollars, and the county board are asking basic business questions they can't answer. If I behaved like that in my business, I'd be fired. I came here for the redistricting. You have the gentleman flipping through papers, couldn't answer some basic questions. In private business, that would be unacceptable. So if county employees are going to get bonuses, they need to act like normal business people and have the answers that we, the people, want to know when we come to meetings. Thank you.
Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Citizens' comments are closed. Thank you. We'll now have a presentation, Patty Merrill, on the American Rescue Plan, the county's financial director.
Good evening, Chairman O'Day, Vice Chairwoman Uhas, and County Board Supervisors. Sorry, I didn't practice with my remote. On March 11, 2021, President Biden signed into law the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. Included in the $1.9 trillion package was direct funding to states, counties, and large municipalities. Smaller municipalities who also received funding, but that came through the states. Payments were to be issued in 2 tranches, or halves. The first tranche was distributed after certification was received. The second tranche will be distributed no earlier than 12 months after the first. Kenosha County was allocated $32,935,000 in ARPA funds. On May 18th, the board passed a resolution directing the administration to apply for the funds, as well as review allowed uses, develop a plan to expend the funding, and bring a plan forward to the county board. On May 20th, the certification was submitted to U.S. Treasury to apply for the Kenosha County funds. On June 7th, we received the first half of our funds, and on June 20th, updated the Finance and Administration Committee that those funds had been received. This evening, we will give an overview of the American Rescue Plan, what areas funds can be expended, and an outline of the plan that administration has put together. What can ARPA funds be used for? There are 4 broad categories that define eligible uses for ARPA funds. Respond to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 or its negative economic impacts. Respond to workers performing essential work during the COVID-19 public health emergency. For the provision of governmental services to the extent of the reduction in revenue, and to make necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband. The 4 categories are further defined in the following ways. Category 1, responding to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 or its economic impacts. Public health impacts include COVID-19 mitigation and prevention, services and programming to contain the spread of the virus, including but not limited to vaccination programs, testing, quarantine programs, PPE, enforcement of public health orders and public communication efforts, support for prevention, mitigation, and other services in congregate living facilities, and public health surveillance. It also includes medical expenses, COVID-19 linked medical expenses, including both near and long-term needs, care and services to address new COVID-19 variants and potentially serious symptoms. It also includes behavioral health care to meet behavioral health needs exacerbated by the pandemic and to respond to other public health impacts, including mental health treatment, substance misuse treatment, hotlines, crisis intervention, overdose prevention, etc. It also includes public health and safety staff covered payrolls and benefits, including payroll and covered benefits for public safety, public health, healthcare, human services, and similar employees to the extent that their services are devoted to mitigating the COVID-19 public health emergency. This category is effective from March 3rd, 2021 to December 31st, 2024. Expenses to improve the design and execution of health and public health programs, and expenses to address disparities in public health outcomes. Economic impacts include, but are not limited to, assistance to unemployed workers, assistance to households or populations facing negative economic impacts due to COVID-19, expenses to improve the effectiveness of economic relief programs, small businesses and nonprofits, and aid to impacted industries disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, including but not limited to tourism, travel, and hospitality. Category 2 is to respond to workers performing essential work during COVID-19 public health emergency. It allows premium pay of up to $13 an hour per worker to eligible workers performing essential work during the public health emergency. Essential workers include all government employees. Essential work includes regular in-person interactions or regular physical handling of items that were also handled by others. Category 3, for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue. The interim final rule includes a formula to calculate revenue loss. Reduction in revenue is measured relative to the revenue collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency. For us, that was 2019. Revenue loss is calculated on general revenue for the entire county, not a specific division. Under this category, funds can be used for the provision of governmental services, including infrastructure, to the extent that this reduction in revenue experienced due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Kenosha County did experience a significant revenue loss in 2020. The fourth category is to make necessary investment in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. Clean water and drinking water projects. Primary use of funds is to assist communities in making water infrastructure capital improvements, mostly geared towards municipalities to aid with failing systems. As a county, we do not have a water utility. Sewer and stormwater infrastructure, stormwater runoff, water pollution, flood control, green infrastructure that supports stormwater resiliency, and broadband infrastructure. Eligible investments in broadband are those that are designed to provide services meeting adequate upload and download speeds and are provided to unserved or underserved areas of households and businesses. The American Rescue Plan also defines items for which funds cannot be used. General infrastructure projects unless paid for with funds under revenue loss. contributions to rainy day funds, financial reserves or similar funds, non-federal match to federal grants, principal and interest on debt service, legal settlements or judgments. As stated earlier, the Kenosha County has been allocated $32,935,000 in ARPA funds. The first half has been received and no funds have been expended at this time. In May, Treasurer released the interim final rule, which provides guidance on how the funds can be used. The comment period ended July 16th. Treasury received over 1,000 comments, which they're reviewing and will incorporate into the final rule. The final rule will provide additional clarification as well as potential expansion of the use of the funds in the upcoming years. In the meantime, Treasury has issued a statement that the governing rule is the interim final rule. The Kenosha County Plan addresses the areas that have been identified through a combination of requests by County Board supervisors, members of the public, and internal stakeholders. ARPA funds are to be used from March 3rd, 2021 through December 31st, 2024. As this plan was compiled, consideration was given to the county's current needs and what is anticipated as our needs over the next several years, especially in the areas of public health, behavioral health, infrastructure, and Brookside. Consideration was also given to the fact that ARPA funds are one-time funds. Guidance on best practices from Wisconsin Counties Association, Government Finance Officers Association, National Association of Counties, as well as other sources, remind us that one-time funds should be for one-time expenditures. If new FTEs are hired, new programs started, raises given using these funds, beginning in 2025, these items would have to be funded with levy dollars. This can create an unsustainable situation. Careful consideration was given to potential uses of the funds for operations, and in such cases, there's a planned phase out of the usage of the funds by 2024. The Kenosha County Plan is laid out following the four broad categories outlined earlier in this presentation and proposes funding by year in each. Proposed use of funds for 2021 will be presented in the form of a resolution with the appropriate budget modifications. Proposed use of funds for 2022 are reflected in the budget County Executive Kreuser presented and you now have before you. Proposed uses for 2023 and 24 are expected to be included in future budgets for those years. In the areas of public health and behavioral health, the plan sets aside $5 million to be utilized in 2022, 2023, and 2024. As we all know, the pandemic is not over. Although there was a lull in early summer, the Delta variant has created more demand for services from the health division. The plan does not include additional funding for public health in 2021, as there are other funding sources we anticipate will cover the needs of the health division this year. The same is true of behavioral health. This plan does not set aside additional funding for behavioral health in 2021, but there is provision in 22, 23, and 24 to address the anticipated tsunami of behavioral health needs in the upcoming years as a result of the pandemic. Behavioral health has been the focus of several county board supervisors and has been mentioned often in relation to the use of these funds. Funds have been set aside each year to offset direct COVID-related expenses for Brookside, included but not limited to PPE, cleaning supplies, and additional staff needed for testing, screening, and care of residents who may test positive for COVID. The plan includes proposed bonuses for county staff, including but not limited to command staff at the Sheriff's Department, correctional officers in the jail, staff working at the Health Division and at Brookside, as well as other areas of the county. There was extensive discussion at the Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee about using ARPA funds to provide bonuses to areas of the county where additional hours have been worked, and not compensated, as well as concern for the added level of risk involved in working during the pandemic. Kenosha County did experience significant revenue loss in 2020. A portion of those funds have been set aside to aid Brookside with potential lost revenue due to decreased census during the pandemic. The component for each year will be finalized as we close the year, but the plan includes a provision to fund those potential losses. Another component of the plan, utilizing funds from lost revenue, provides funding for capital projects. As you will see in the budget, this allows for the acceleration of some capital projects like the Kemper Shoreline and the South Pike project. Although ARPA funds cannot be used for these specific projects, utilizing funds for other large projects allows the county to take advantage of grants that are available for the Kemper Shoreline and the South Pike project to help fund these projects sooner than originally anticipated, and thereby decrease borrowing in future years. There is a provision to fund operations in the areas of corrections and joint services to address the salary needs identified in these areas, as well as a provision for administrative expenses to fund potential fees for consultants to aid planning projects and providing services in relation to the items identified in the plan. Lastly, there are funds set aside to help support efforts to provide broadband to unserved and underserved areas of the county, many of which are located west of I-94. There are many components of the plan, but there are also upcoming outside funds that may impact the allocation of funds within the plan. At the federal level, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that has passed the Senate and is currently being considered by the House includes funding for roads, bridges, and broadband. Depending on the final result, some of those funds might be utilized in the areas that this plan calls for using ARPA funds. At the state level, there were funds included in the state budget to fund broadband. We're monitoring whether any of the providers who may have received any of those funds plan to address unserved or underserved areas of Kenosha County. In addition, there are funds expected from opioid settlements, which can be used for programs in human services, which might overlap with ARPA funds currently earmarked for behavioral health. If these outside funds come through, this would free up ARPA funds to be utilized in other areas. The report this evening has been a high-level outline of the items that have been addressed in the plan. The expected next steps are the following. A more detailed presentation of the plan will be given to the Finance and Administration Committee at their regular meeting on October 14th. Also at that meeting, a resolution with the necessary budget modifications for proposed use of funds for 2021 will be brought forward for approval. If this resolution passes committee, it will be brought forth to the board on October 19th for consideration. 2022 proposed uses of funds are included in the budget and will be discussed more in depth at each oversight committee meeting, the Finance and Administration budget hearings, and amended or approved through the budget process. 2023 and 2024 components have been earmarked and will be brought forward in future budgets or through budget modifications as needed. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. We'll get this set back up. I have no announcements. We're going to move right into supervisor reports. Just Supervisor Grady, just 1 second till I get the board up here. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to earlier requests by fellow supervisors, committee meeting that will have our budgetary review for Department of Public Works will be October 18th. And it'll either be at 6 o'clock or 6:30 p.m. I'll get back to you more specifically with that time, but Tuesday, October 18th, Highway 50 and 45 will be there. We encourage any interested supervisor to be a part of the budgetary process, as it is a rather, it's a lengthy process, so come prepared, and I'd like to have you there. Other items that we had addressed in our most recent Public Works meeting have to do, we're going to carry on with parks. You heard the announcement that there's a ribbon cutting at Veterans Park on the 12th. That's Tuesday at noon. Again, please attend if you can. It's really quite a decent project. It's a nice honor to our veterans that have served Kenosha County. We also have a 10/15, October 15th ribbon cutting. It's at 1 p.m., Petrifying Springs, and it has to do with the Pike River restoration. For those of you who are longtime Kenosha residents, you probably are aware that Pike River floods periodically. It's had various remedies that were tried to be made over the years, many years ago, dams and so forth. Never really worked out, always kind of a issue with even an inch or two of rain. So now we actually have a much more, shall we say, sustainable, natural, better plan in place, and we encourage you to see it. It'll be at area number 4 on the 15th of this month, 1 p.m. We are working on the trails for both Parkside and Petrifying Springs. It's been a busy and active month as far as parks goes. Moving on to highways now. This is kind of the shoulder season for highways. We're taking an eye towards what's going to come in the winter with plowing and so forth, so we're trying to wrap up the work that's already in progress, yet be prepared for the plowing and salting, which is inevitable at some point in the future. Many of the projects I'm going to mention here actually have a next season completion date, which would be the end of 2022 construction. The one thing that was alluded to earlier is, thankfully, you can call it County Highway S, 142, Burlington Road. That will be wrapped up hopefully by the end of this month, no later than the middle of November. For those of you who have traveled the road, you can see its improvements, and we're happy to have that completed. Out on the west end, County F, Local Roads Project, that is doing some punch list items. That's just about all wrapped up. The ones that are going into next season that are carryovers are Highway 50. That's a big project. You can see that there's been substantial progress on that. And that is the area on Highway 50 from 118th Avenue to 43rd Avenue. You can see there are 2 full lanes of pavement that are already down, and they're working on that. And again, that'll be a next year wrap up on that. Another big project for next year will be County K. That's 60th Street, and that'll be from County Highway H to Union Pacific Railroad. That'll bring that from 2 lanes total to 4 lanes. It'll be 2 lanes in each direction. So that's a project for next season. And again, for next season, County U and Q, County U and C. That's out by the U-Line properties in that general area, and that will be constructed next construction season. We're back to the JB deck replacement in the town of Wheatland. It was gratifying to find out that the infrastructure under the bridge really pretty solid, but the bridge deck itself had failed. So the construction plan on that will be at the cold weather time when we can actually tear out that bridge deck. That'll be done in the cold weather, January of 22. And then next year, hopefully, by the end of June, we'll have that new bridge deck completed on JB. Some other projects we're still working on, Highway KR. Again, that's a fall of 22 project completion. State Highway 32, that's been kind of a funky one down there. That's South Sheridan Road down south of Culver's and McDonald's and so forth. That's a state project. We don't really have a lot of control over that. The city's involved with that to a certain extent. The last thing I think I'll mention proudly for highways is the long-suffering County L crossing, which is Union Pacific Railroad. They've been really most uncooperative, Union Pacific has. We do expect it'll be done sometime this month, but I'll believe it when I see it. Next thing we're taking a look at is golf. Golf has been a bright spot. We had a very, very good playing season, a lot of revenue, big events. There's some things that are still coming up this fall, and as long as the weather holds, we'll still have golf there and they'll still be producing revenue. Some other things for Public Works, we're taking a look at facilities. There are an item or two at KCDC, which is detention center. They're doing some isolation shower modifications. That is going to be done by the end of this month, we expect. There's a sprinkler replacement at Brookside, and there's a courthouse washroom remodeling project, and those are all basically on schedule and on budget. Anything else we have here? Oh, for our building here that we're in, the administration building, the glass, the big glass is pretty much replaced. It's all back in place. We're still working on the security film, which will be applied to the backside of the glass to make it more secure. So those are the top items in my particular report for this evening. And again, we encourage you the 18th, please come out to Highway 1545 and be part of our budgetary process. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Rodriguez, did you have your line on?
Chair, just to go off of what Supervisor Grady hinted at, the railroad crossing on Highway L, they did come and speak to us at the farm there, and they did indicate that they will start reconstruction of that crossing 2 weeks from today on the 19th, and anticipated to be finished on the 20th, the following day. So that's that. And I just wanted to bring up two things to the attention of the clerk. On the county website, there's been no updated minutes added for any of our meetings since January. I'm not sure if that's you or who uploads those, but there's no minutes since January of this year for any of our meetings. And I would ask that the clock in the chambers here that we use to start our meetings be adjusted. Every other clock seems to be accurate. That one seems to be fast. And those 3 or 4 minutes that it's fast, that could mean somebody from the public who wants to speak to us may miss that opportunity because of that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Berg, you have your light on?
In terms of legislative committee, you'll be seeing tonight the resolution by Supervisor Decker pertaining to the placement location process of Chapter 980 sexually violent persons in Kenosha County. That is on our agenda tonight. And something that's been brought up, we're going to be talking after the budget process is done. There's apparently been some possible misuse of excused versus unexcused in terms of attendance for meetings, so we're going to have that discussion on that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other supervisor reports? Supervisor Belsky. Here to go.
Thank you. We had our Human Services meeting this evening, and there will be 3 resolutions that will be forwarded on to Finance and Administration. They are a resolution to modify the Division of Health 2021 budget for a grant, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's 4-year grant. Then there's another one, resolution to modify the Division of Health 2021 budget with American Rescue Plan Act funding designated for public health. And then the final one that will be going to Finance and Administration will be the resolution for Brookside Care Center to apply for the American Rescue Plan Rural Funding and Provider Relief Phase 4 prior to the introduction of the resolution for all COVID monies needing to come before the county board. This was automatic funding that had gone to Brookside. Now, because of the resolution for approval, this will come before the board. This is a grant allowing Administrator Begdala to apply for this funding, which she wasn't required to prior. I also commented on these resolutions that are coming forward that we are given more information on how the money is going to be used to alleviate a lot of questions. So if they could bring forward statistics, any kind of reporting, are they going to be ramping up employee numbers, hiring new people. So we'd like to see more detail with regard to any ARPA funding or COVID funding coming forward in the future. I also asked Director Jansen to give an update. Rebecca and Carrie are doing an awesome job in behavioral health services. Many of you are aware of when there's a Chapter 51, they are taken by the Sheriff's Department up to Winnebago. It can sometimes turn into an 8-hour ordeal. They are currently working with Illinois, the Lake Behavioral Hospital, which is much closer and will service our constituents much better. It will also save us time and money, not only in human services, but in the Sheriff's Department. Another item we discussed this evening, and I asked Supervisor Decker to bring this resolution to Human Services because I think it is a very valuable resolution, because the resolution is pertaining to placement, location, process of Chapter 980 sexually violent persons in Kenosha County. She did her homework. She consulted at the state level to see if this new process, this new procedure, we were breaking any state statutes. It's following all state statutes. The one main difference, and that I personally agree with and ask for your vote, is that before the Sheriff's Department and the court determine placement, that it is discussed with the local municipality, whether that be a town or village. They know their area better than anybody. So if someone were to be placed in Pleasant Prairie or in Wheatland, they're going to be pulled in before placement has been determined. And I think that's a saving step, especially when you can involve the community impacted by this individual being placed. And then we talked about Kenosha County Public Health. Some of the updates, most of the statistics can be viewed online. The one thing that we asked of Dr. Freiheit is that she send out a new communication to the county school administrations clarifying that the plans, the recommendations that public health is looking for schools to put in place are recommendations only. It is up to that local school board to set policy. So there will be a revision going out immediately to all local school districts. And that was it.
Thank you. Any other Supervisor Gaske?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one brief update from Planning Development and Extension Education Committee in regards to Supervisor Gentz's request. Our specific committee budget hearing will be Wednesday, October 13 at 6 p.m. At the Kenosha County Center in Bristol in Conference Room B, Kenosha County Center in Bristol. Obviously, any supervisor, anybody from the public is welcome to attend, and our committee has been aware of this meeting, but anybody else is welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Supervisor Palmville?
Yes, I would just, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say that on Tuesday, October 12th, Judiciary and Law will be meeting at 6 p.m. here on the second floor, and it will be a combined meeting for the evening.
Thank you. See no other signs. We'll move on to county executive appointments. Yeah.
County Executive Appointments, 35, John Coffey to serve on as the county representative on the Silver Lake Management District Board.
Refer to Planning Development Education Extension Committee.
Appointment 36, Harry Laws to serve as an interim commissioner on the Silver Lake Management District Board.
Refer to Planning Development and Education Committee.
37, James Pertenton to serve as an interim commissioner on the Silver Lake Management District Board.
Refer to Planning Development Education Extension Committee.
38, Donna Kubik to serve as an interim commissioner on the Silver Lake Management District Board.
Refer to Planning Development Education Committee, please.
39, Noel Shear to serve on the Kenosha County Library System Board.
Refer to Finance and Administration.
40, Richard Willoughby to serve on the Kenosha County Human Services Board.
Refer to Human Services Committee, please.
41, Robert Pitts to serve on the Brookside Board of Trustees.
Refer to Human Services Committee.
42, John O'Day to serve on the Brookside Board of Trustees.
Refer to Human Services Committee.
New business, Resolution 1 reading, 61 from the Legislative Committee, a resolution pertaining to placement location process of Chapter 980 Sexually Violent Persons in Kenosha County. From the Legislative Committee, Berg, nay. Boyd Frederick, I. Nordigan, I. Mauer, I. Kubicki, nay. Beth, I. Lewis, I.
Supervisor Frederick.
Move Resolution 61.
Been moved by Supervisor Frederick, second by Supervisor Nordigan. Supervisor Frederick on the motion.
Actually, I would like to move that Supervisor Decker. She will do a much better job explaining the resolution than what I could.
Fine, thank you. Supervisor Decker.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick and Chairman O'Day. Like Supervisor Abelski said, this resolution, it basically does three main things. It tells the county to work with the local municipalities on the placement of these sexually violent predators. That's number one. Number two is it opens up, or it makes the process more transparent, naming the committee something that the public would actually understand, and also having the agendas not as vague so people actually know what's on the agenda. And number three, there's several wordings that we are requesting the several definitions that we are requesting the legislature to clarify, because they can be ambiguous, or we need clarifications on the definitions. That's pretty much what it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion?
Question?
Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the run-up to this, it was my inference or my assumption that oftentimes municipalities, communities do not have a heads up that this is happening. Is this particular piece of legislation going to address that, improve upon that? Can someone comment, please?
I can answer that. Yes, that is one of the main purposes of this. Right now, the municipalities are not given a heads up that this is going to happen until after the placement has been ordered by the court, by a judge in the court. Now it is telling the county that once they find a place, or when they're looking for a place, they need to work with the municipalities to make sure that place fits the state statutes and is a good placement for these people.
That answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Berg.
I fielded a few phone calls today as to why I voted no against this. There's a few reasons. My career, the job that I have, I know that when people do the crime, they got to do the time. When they get done with their crime or their time, they have to come back into our community somehow. There's been issues over the past 5 years of individuals being dropped off at parks after being released with a sleeping bag and a tent because there was no place for them to go based on lines and circles that were drawn by municipalities. That's since been changed, and now the state stepped in and created something like this, and they've had other changes also. Another reason why I voted no against this is because this asks, and it states, Board of Supervisors requests the state legislature revise the definition of a youth center to specify whether the definition of a youth center may include a private residence. That in itself says you can't put them anywhere. If they're going to ask for a private residence to be included because of children, I understand, I get it. There's people in this community, in this world, that we just don't need to have. But unfortunately, we don't have the say of where they get to go. If we include a person's private residence, you can't put them anywhere. There's no place in the county or in the country that you can put them. So those are a couple of the reasons why I did not support this. A lot of this is because this is a state's world. We can ask till we're blue in the face, but a lot of this is, in the state's lap. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be voting in support of this tonight, and I would encourage all of my colleagues to do the same. I think too often we see in the news or hear from friends, family, and neighbors that a sexually violent person is now in their neighborhood and they didn't know about it until the person was moved in. One of the most precious things we have in this world are our children, and it is our duty as legislators at the county level to keep those children safe. I think what this does here is notifies the various municipalities within Kenosha County that one of these individuals is coming into their municipality, into their communities. And as we all know, nobody knows our communities best or better than those of us who live in them. I think the assertion that this is a state issue and we should leave it to the state is not precedent, especially with this board. There's been time and time again where this body has voted or sent a resolution to the state to say, hey, you need to address this issue. And that's what we're doing here as well. So for those reasons, I'm going to be supporting this. I want to commend Supervisor Decker for taking the work on this and commend the committee for passing this. Thank you.
Supervisor Franco?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to give a perspective on the language of the resolution as well as its relationship to the state statute that it refers to. Frankly, after reading the resolution, I have to admit I found some of it problematic. First of all, the primary ask, it seems to me, is to form a temporary committee to address the placement of violent sex offenders within Kenosha County. I get that. However, the language of the statute that's referred to, Chapter 980 of the Wisconsin Criminal Code, clearly states not only the process, but more importantly, who would be eligible to be on this committee. These include a representative from the Department of Health Services, a local probation or parole officer, corporation counsel, and a representative from land use planning. Nowhere in the statute does it say anything requiring anyone from the county board or that the county board has jurisdiction over the naming, instruction, or oversight of this committee. Secondly, I interpreted the first "be it resolved" where it says the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors shall name the temporary committee as to mean that the board will be responsible for appointing the members itself. If this is the intent of the sentence, it seems to me it contradicts my reading of the text because we were not given that authority by the statute. Moreover, I talked to Corp Counsel and I was informed that a temporary committee already exists of the above-mentioned relevant persons who are in the process of relocating several individuals for court-ordered supervised release. In short, making this part of the resolution moot. Secondly, the clarification of statutory language and suggested material changes to the law itself should come from the state legislature, not the county board, since they have the primary jurisdiction over these issues. In fact, the legislature has made amendments to the law over the years precisely to deal with new contingencies. Ultimately, the current committee itself should be the body by which any suggested modifications are recommended, since they are on the front lines in dealing with the difficult placement of violent sex offenders in Kenosha County. In conclusion, I believe we should adhere to the state statute as written and let the present committee, who has the authority and jurisdiction to effectuate the placement, let them do its job. Therefore, I will not be supporting this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Decker?
Just to clarify, this resolution does not create a committee because the committee is created in state statutes under Section 980. This is just requiring that we name it. The Chapter 980 Sexually Violent Persons Placement Review Committee. This was not included. I when I submitted the resolution and it was before the legislative committee, it came with an example agenda that the county sends out, and the name of the committee on that agenda is very ambiguous, and it leads people to believe that the committee does not, or it leads people to believe, not know what the committee actually does. And I know Supervisor Gully had an experience with that. After some concerns in the legislative committee, it was tabled, and in between the meetings, or it was referred to the next committee meeting, I contacted Ledge Council up at the state of Wisconsin, and they reviewed the resolution and said nothing in the resolution contradicts contradicts state statutes or violates any state statutes, so we are okay on that. And just for us to say that that the state legislature should take care of this isn't something that the state legislature needs to take care of. This is something that we are allowed to because the state statutes are moot, and Ledge Council said that we are okay doing this. For us to try to push it off on the state legislature, in my opinion, that means it will not get done, because if our governor right now at this point said the sky was blue, I believe the legislature would say the sky is green. They will not agree on anything at this point. So thank you.
Supervisor Burke.
The discussion of it going to the state, and it's the state responsibility, and they took the responsibility because municipalities shunned folks in our communities, the sexual offenders. They made it so that they couldn't be placed anywhere. That's why the state had to step in. We have an amendment on here that the committee shall notify the municipal administrator and village president, town chairman of the potential residents within, originally it was 3, we changed it to 10 business days. I'm not opposed to them being a part of the process, but when we open it up to that level, look, we're all elected folks here. We network. We've gained networking since we've gotten into office. And we know landlords, we know real estate agents. If an individual, say I'm an administrator of a municipality, and I don't want these folks in my community, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make it so that they don't come into my municipality. So I'm gonna contact the landlord of that property, or I'm gonna contact the real estate agent and say, hey, get somebody in this house right away because the county's about to put somebody in there. So now we're lengthening out that process for these folks to come into our communities, where they have to come. Which then lengthens the court process, which lengthens the committee process. It's just, that's why I say let the state handle this. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Grady, do you have your?
Yes, I do. I have a follow-up comment. And I think just in general, anytime you can have your local control, your local people have their heads up, have their influence, you're farther ahead as a community, you're farther ahead as a county than simply expecting the state's going to take a look at it. I mean, I think that is just, we know what goes on in Kenosha County more than the people who don't live here. And I look at this as a bit of housekeeping, a way of giving community, citizens, general public a heads up. And anytime we can do that, that's what good government's about. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Belsky?
Yes, I agree with everything Supervisor Grady said. When I met with Supervisor Decker, because we were uncertain if it would be coming to Human Services or Legislative, I went over this very closely. I also read the letter from the state. You know, it's our job to investigate and legislate at the county level. And I just feel that and that we have every right to change process or procedure as long as we're following state statute. I agree with Supervisor Grady and Supervisor Decker when they say that we should engage the communities that are impacted. I think it saves time in the long run because someone could be misplaced with behavioral issues, that in a place that's not appropriate. And after the sheriff's department and court has assigned and appointed that placement, we risk the chance of then going back to court because we didn't involve that municipality. So I agree that we should vote for this. I think it's a good resolution. It follows state statutes, and we're doing our job at the county level by legislating. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Celery.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Supervisor Berg, did your committee get any input by the local district attorney?
There was nobody at our committee meeting. I'm not sure if Supervisor Decker deferred off.
Did the sheriff address the committee in reaching this resolution to the best of your knowledge?
They too were not at the committee level.
And then I'll ask, did any municipal police chief address this committee to the best of your knowledge at the hearing you had on this?
They also were not at the committee level.
Was there any input by then the Attorney General or the State Department of Corrections?
There was nobody present.
In reaching what would be 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth from the end, the resolution that indicates, be it further resolved that the county board requests, in essence, no one be placed within 1,500 feet of property. Was there any rationale given as to why this should not be 2,000 feet or even a greater figure away from any other placement from a location that's identified?
Not that I remember.
Your Honor, I feel that there's been so little input from anyone that has to contribute to working knowledge of how to place these individuals that there's so much information missing as to how to come up with some of the conclusions included in this resolution. I respectfully move that this matter be deferred back to committee.
Joe, can you say, if he has a second, is there a second to that motion? No? Died.
I will be, without that input, I will be voting against this simply because there's so many unanswered questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nordigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, in support to what Supervisor Grady had also mentioned, this is a document of clarity. What happened a few months ago was, I'll just say that the temporary committee dropped the ball and tried to place two of these offenders in a place that was not allowed according to state statutes. The municipality was not informed that anything was coming on until actually the village administrator had, I don't know how I didn't ask him how he got wind of that, and it created a large 200 plus people meeting asking, why is this happening? What's going on? These people are living in these communities, want to know what's going on in their communities. And when we have these Chapter 980 sexual violent persons being placed in their communities, they have the right to at least know that they're in the right, correct spot. We dropped the ball. The county dropped the ball on this the last time. This is an attempt to not allow that to happen again. It's clarity. That's what this is. It is not going against anything that the statutes already state. 1,500 feet is, I believe, in the statutes. Is that correct, Supervisor Decker? That is correct. So they didn't need to go anywhere else. That is in the statutes. So right now, I am going to support this as it is. I feel it's needed, and the municipalities need to be involved in placement. They know where their areas are. I'm sorry that Supervisor Berg has such a dim view on the smaller municipalities, on placement. I believe that they will work to find a place because they are allowed, I'm sorry, that the state tells them they have to. This isn't like it was before when they didn't have that, I don't want to say forced on, but that was the ordinances or the laws that they have to follow now. So again, I will be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Supervisor Franco?
Yes. I think one of the things that troubled me about this resolution is that we don't have statutory oversight. It would have been nice, and I concur with Supervisor Celebrate, what he was implying. Why aren't the members of this temporary committee here? They should be the ones that could or should be addressing whether the specifics, because they're the ones that have to are making these difficult, challenging decisions. And the fact that they're not here, I think, is really significant, because they should have been in committee, should have been called to committee whenever this was discussed. And then some of these issues, I think, could have been hammered out at the committee level, or at the very least been here today so we could ask them questions to see if if this resolution would work. So I think that's a glaring problem here, because we're talking about it in a vacuum of sorts and speculating on what should be done, modified, but the people who are actually making decisions, who are actually part of the committee, are not here. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Supervisor Decker, Supervisor Celebrate asked and was told no, that law enforcement wasn't a part of this discussion. Is it correct of me to state that law enforcement isn't part of the placement of these individuals anyways?
You are correct. The Department of Corrections and the Department of Justice do not oversee 980 placements. The Department of Health does. So that is why they were not contacted, because they have nothing to do with the oversight of the 980 violent sexual offenders placements.
Thank you. And I would just note that we see it with at least the KPD. I'm sure the Sheriff's Department does it too with their social media. Pleasant Prairie, I know, does it. When somebody is getting released into their community, they alert the community. This is a good thing. What I'm hearing a lot of tonight is standing up for people who did something that is incredibly heinous. A consequence of that is being known as this type of offender for the rest of your life. A consequence of that is not having the freedom to choose where you live. Those are consequences for actions that these individuals willingly took. And voting against this tonight is really telling the municipality that you represent that I disagree that you should know about these individuals coming into your community. It's telling your constituents that I don't think you should know about this ahead of time. You should find out after the fact or after it's too late. That's a pretty black and white issue, I think.
That's it?
That's it.
Supervisor Rose, did you have your light on?
I do, Mr. Chairman, thank you. All this resolution is an improvement on the present process. How can you oppose that? Thank you.
Supervisor Mauer.
Thank you. I would like to point out that one of the committee members was the committee that chooses where these offenders lives, was in the legislative committee. Corporation Counsel was there, and he did give us his opinions on the matter. I'd also like to point out, I think we're forgetting that we don't represent the state. We don't represent the chiefs of police or the committee members. We represent the people that live in these areas that will have to live next to these people. That's who we represent. That's who we're speaking for tonight. That's why I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Roll call requested, Mr.
Elliott? No other discussion? No other discussion? Roll call is requested. Yes, for, no against.
Motion passes, 17 yes, 6 no.
Moving on.
The approval of the September 15th, 2021 and September 21st, 2021 minutes by Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Supervisor Frederick.
I move to approve the minutes of both meetings.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.